Good morning, Your Excellency, Mr. Jack Hanan, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Cote d'Ivoire. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Welcome to the 12th Conference of Climate Change and Sustainable Development in Africa, held in the beautiful city of Abidjan, a city that I called home for 4 years, and it's wonderful to be back again for this very important gathering. This flagship event is a joint initiative by the African Union Commission, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the African Development Bank. It serves as a pivotal forum, uniting African voices, agency, and African positions, consolidating African positions on critical issues. As we prepare for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of Parties in Baku, COP29. Climate adaptation and resilience are central to rethinking development for our continent. In the past 2 decades, Africa has faced drastic rise both in the frequency and intensity of natural disasters, with their impact spreading rapidly across the continent. Recent events such as severe droughts and floods in East Africa, cyclones in Malawi and Libya, and intense droughts in Southern Africa region really highlight this growing crisis. Despite Africa's minimal contribution to global warming. On the other hand, the ripple effects of the global shocks, such as COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and other geopolitical tensions, have caused enormous disruptions on the African economies, leading up to balance of payment and fiscal crisis. These impacts challenge Africa's socio-economic development and the achievement of Africa's Agenda 2063, as well as achieving sustainable development goals. This underscores the necessity for African Union member states, regional organizations, and Pan-African bodies to collaborate in the pursuit of credible, achievable, and innovative solutions to the challenges posed by climate change. Africa's priority is climate resilient development, reflected in our nationally determined contributions and long-term low emissions development strategies. The continent faces dual challenge of adapting to climate impacts while investing in climate-informed development. And this requires capacity, finance, and technology transfer, led by developed countries in line with the common but differentiated responsibility principle of the Paris Agreement. The first global stocktake that concluded at COP28 in December of 2023 showed that the implementations of measures provided for in the Paris Agreement has fallen short of the intended outcomes of the agreement. The world is on course to overshoot the 2 degrees maximum warming that was actually highlighted before in Paris. The outcome of this global stocktake called on parties to contribute to global efforts to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in this critical decade. This decision also encourages the next round of nationally determined contributions due in February of 2025 to include ambitious economy-wide emission reduction targets aligned with the objective to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. The course correction called for by this global stocktake would extend beyond more ambitions that has been already captured by the internationally determined contributions to also include increased means of implementation to support for developing world through a new collective qualified goal on climate finance, faster technology transfer, a global goal on adaptation, as well as finalization of rules and modalities regulating carbon markets in the context of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate finance remains grossly insufficient. The $100 billion annual goal pledged in 2009 was only nominally achieved by 2022, falling far short of the estimated $1.3 trillion required to support climate action. Global climate finance for adaptation was expected to double by 2025, but instead it has declined, jeopardizing the Sustainable Development Goals and existing resilience investments. Without substantial adaptation investment, Africa cannot seize opportunities for job creation, green growth, or prevent losses. Scaling adaptation requires integrating climate and biodiversity actions with substantial financing. Africa faces one of the lowest levels of green finance access, exacerbated by a growing debt burden. Many African countries spend 5 times more on debt repayments than on climate action. This hampers large-scale adaptation and ecosystem restoration efforts. Therefore, this timely conference seeks to identify effective strategies for securing the necessary financing to bolster Africa's climate resilience and adaptation, while also tackling pressing development issues. First, we must use innovative financing solutions for adaptation without exacerbating debt burdens. Debt finance, swaps for climate adaptation, and carbon credits could mobilize resources for meaningful investments and direct it to regions and populations that are mostly affected by climate change. Analysis by ECA and Dalberg shows that $120 per ton carbon price could generate up to $82 billion in Africa, improving livelihoods for 167 million people in Africa. We must work together to make use of this potential. Second, trade tools, including the WTO agreements and regional trading blocs like the African Continental Free Trade Area, can also direct investments into adaptation. The 2021 African State and Trends in Adaptation report suggests that phasing out agricultural tariffs could reduce undernourishments caused by climate change by 64%. The African Union Climate Change and Climate Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan 2022 to 2032 and the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program present further opportunities to build Africa's climate resilience. These initiatives reflect our continent's commitment to effective climate action ahead of COP29. Third, we need partnerships between the private and public sectors with stakeholders at all levels to scale up adaptation investments. In Africa, adaptation investments must be integrated with other investments, such as in mitigation or social infrastructure. We need to challenge the misconception that adaptation is not investment ready. Although private sector investment in adaptation may be more complex, it actually holds significant potential. To unlock this, finance must be channeled credibly toward adaptation. Given the urgency, global action and multi-sectoral partnerships at local, national, regional, and global levels are really essential. In conclusion, developed countries must honor their commitments and support Africa to keep climate change in check. I extend my gratitude to Climate Dev Africa partners, the government of Cote d'Ivoire for co-hosting, and development partners, particularly the Swedish International Development Agency, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Nordic Development Fund, and the European Union for their ongoing support. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa will continue to work with all partners to support our countries in financing and investing in climate adaptation, which is indispensable for lives, livelihoods, and dignified development for all. Thank you for your attention.